Most men don't realize they're lonely. Not in the way loneliness is usually described. They're surrounded by people, they work with others, they joke with friends, they might even have a family. But late at night, when the noise fades, there's a quiet pressure in the chest, a sense that no one actually knows them. Not really. And what makes this more painful is that most men don't think this is a problem. They think it's normal. They think it's the cost of being a man. But here's the truth. We rarely say out loud, this isn't strength. The silent contract men are taught to sign. From an early age, men learn a rule that's never spoken directly, but enforced constantly. Be useful, be capable, be unbothered. If you're hurt, deal with it. If you're scared, hide it. If you're overwhelmed, work harder. There's admiration for competence, respect for control, approval for resilience. But there is very little space for emotional exposure between men. And so men adapt. They talk around themselves instead of about themselves. They discuss facts, sports, systems, ideas, work, anything that doesn't risk judgment. None of this is wrong, but it's incomplete because friendship, real friendship, doesn't begin with shared interests. It begins with shared vulnerability. Most men don't struggle with friendship because they're antisocial. They struggle because friendship requires something they were trained to avoid. Real connection starts when someone says, I'm not okay. When a man admits, I'm scared, or I feel lost, or I don't know how to fix this. But men are taught that strength means stability, and vulnerability feels like instability. So instead of opening up, men stay impressive. They stay competent, they stay silent, and over time, that silence turns into loneliness, not because men are broken, but because they were taught that emotional exposure makes them weak. This isn't strength, it's self-containment taken too far. Why men can talk for hours and say nothing. A man can spend years with other men and never be truly known. They'll talk about engines, markets, strategies, fitness routines, politics. They'll debate ideas brilliantly, but they'll never say, oh, I feel like I'm failing. I don't know how to love properly. I'm terrified of being left. I don't feel good enough. Because those statements feel dangerous. The problem isn't that men lack depth. Men are emotionally complex, sensitive, reflective beings. The problem is that they've learned to defend an image, not reveal a reality. And defending an image is exhausting. The myth of the unbreakable man. We glorify men who are unshaken, the man who doesn't flinch, doesn't complain, doesn't need reassurance, doesn't fall apart. But this ideal comes with a hidden cost. If you're never allowed to break, you're never allowed to be held. If you're never allowed to be confused, you're never allowed to be understood. And slowly, quietly, men begin to disappear inside themselves. There's a dangerous idea many men absorb without questioning. If I'm strong, I won't need anyone. But strength without connection turns into isolation. And isolation slowly erodes the nervous system. Men don't need fixing. They need permission. Permission to say, this is heavy. Permission to admit, I don't have this figured out. Permission to be human in front of other men because resilience doesn't come from pretending nothing hurts. It comes from knowing you won't be abandoned when it does. Real strength is being seen and staying. Why vulnerability feels like failure? For many men, vulnerability isn't just uncomfortable, it feels humiliating. Why? Because vulnerability threatens status, and men are taught implicitly that status equals safety. To admit fear feels like demotion, to admit sadness feels like weakness, to admit need feels like failure. But here's what's rarely explained. Vulnerability isn't a loss of power. It's a shift in power. Power from control to connection, from dominance to trust, from isolation to regulation. A quiet truth most men carry. Many men have never said the following sentence out loud. I'm not okay, and I don't know what I need. Not because they don't feel it, but because they've never seen another man say it safely. And so, loneliness isn't caused by lack of people. It's caused by lack of emotional permission Most men don't need more friends, and they need one space where performance stops. A place where they don't have to be impressive, don't have to be solutions focused, don't have to be the strong one. Because emotional suppression doesn't make men stable. It makes them tense, and tension eventually leaks out as anger, numbness, withdrawal, or burnout. Men aren't lonely because they're incapable of connection. They're lonely because they were taught to survive instead of relate. This isn't strength, it's emotional self-exile. Why men fear each other's judgment. Many men fear opening up to other men more than to women. Why? Because male judgment feels final, unforgiving, permanent. The fear isn't rejection, it's humiliation. Being seen as weak, being laughed at, being reduced, so men stay guarded. But here's the paradox. The more men hide their inner world, the more they assume others are hiding theirs too, and everyone ends up alone, together. A different definition of strength is not emotional silence. Strength is emotional regulation with witnesses. Strength is saying, this hurts, and staying present. Strength is tolerating being seen without collapsing. Strength is allowing connection without control. And this is learnable, not through forcing vulnerability, but through gradual, respectful exposure. Men don't need dramatic confessions. They need honest moments, one sentence, one truth, one crack in the armor. Because connection isn't built by unloading everything. It's built by letting something be known. And when another man responds with calm instead of judgment, the nervous system learns something new. I can be real and still be respected. That's not weakness. That's integration. Strength that cannot be shared will eventually collapse. What actually breaks male loneliness? Loneliness doesn't end when men open up. It ends when men experience non-punitive honesty, when vulnerability isn't corrected, mocked, or dismissed, when pain isn't rushed away, when silence is allowed. That's how trust forms. And trust is the foundation of friendship. If this resonates, don't rush to change yourself. Just notice where you learned to stay silent. Notice whose approval you were protecting. Notice what you never felt allowed to say. That awareness alone begins the shift. Men were never meant to carry everything alone. They were taught to. And what we call male strength often isn't strength at all. It's endurance. Without relief, true strength is being able to sit with another man and say, I don't have this figured out. Not loudly, not dramatically, just honestly, because strength that isolates eventually breaks, and strength that connects becomes sustainable. This isn't strength, but what comes next can be. Men don't need to become softer. They need to become more real. They don't need to abandon strength. They need to redefine it. Strength isn't the absence of need. It's the courage to be seen without losing self-respect. If this helped you put words to something you felt quietly for a long time, stay with this channel. We're not here to hype men up. We're here to help them come home to themselves. And that, quietly, changes everything.